Good afternoon. If you're here for the Climate Screens for Produce Growers webinar, you're in the right place. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Janine Wright, the Senior Communications Specialist here at Prospient, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, just a little housekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation today, we encourage you to enter them into the chat at any time. And if they're relate to what we're talking about at the time, I'll try and ask them, or we will try and get to as many of them as we can during the Q&A session at the end. So we have a great presentation planned for you today, and I am joined by Tony Abbas, the Vice President of Sales Development at Prospient, and Paul Arena, the Greenhouse Climate Consultant at Swenson. Paul's the expert, so he's going to take us through some of the things on curtains, and Tony's going to chime in from his perspective. So it should be a great presentation with lots of good take-homes for you. So I'm going to turn the time over to them. They can tell you a bit more about themselves, and then we'll get this thing going.
Okay, my name is Tony Abbas. I, like Janine said, Vice President of Sales and BD for Prospient. Exciting times. I've been with this company for about 6 years now. Happy to have this collaborative conversation. We work and partner with Svensson on almost all of our projects, if not all of our projects. So great company, very knowledgeable people, and I hope that you will benefit and engage. Please ask questions throughout the time that we're together.
Awesome. Thanks for that hype up, Tony. Yeah, we're here as a manufacturer and a solutions provider for anybody who is thinking about our products or using our products. So this presentation is designed to talk to produce growers specifically. And yeah, let me give you a little background on myself first before I get into anything. I've been with Svensson since 2022. I was formerly a grower at a greenhouse called Metrolina Greenhouses. They were a flower producer down here in North Carolina, where I'm currently based. Before that, I was in the university. I have a bachelor's degree in agricultural science. After college, wanted to get my experience in the greenhouse, and then I got picked up by Svensson as the climate consultant. So today we're going to be talking about the importance of climate control inside the greenhouse, common greenhouse challenges, how screens can help fight those challenges, the types of climate screens that are available, and how they might be multifunctional to accomplish to fix the problems that might be happening in your greenhouse climate. And then we'll transition into the economics and payback of installing a screen system, because oftentimes, that's really the main hurdle, is how much is this going to cost? But we'll go into the details of that too. So today, produce growers are dealing with a lot of challenges. Oftentimes, these are the main 5 that we hear from Svensson. You have hot temperatures during sunny days. There's challenges with controlling the humidity. You have unevenness in your crop growth, and you're trying to create a more uniform environment. In the wintertime, you have rising heating costs, and it's more challenging to grow into that winter season. So you're trying to extend your production further into that winter period. Our products are, designed to fight these challenges. And oftentimes we hear from growers we have a lot of questions from growers about how the crops are meant to fight those challenges. And throughout this presentation, I'm hoping I can answer a lot of these. And at the end, of course, you can ask as many questions as you want if I don't clarify anything.
Just to pipe up before you go on, man, just so that the viewing audience knows, it's not just produce. The stuff that Paul will be discussing and kind of the details that we'll get into, it basically would be, it's useful for any crop that you're going to be using a greenhouse to cultivate or produce in. So don't think it's just produce focused. Please ask questions throughout, and we can always take it to make it focused to whatever you're growing or any trials or tribulations you're having in your existing farm or whatever you may be planning.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. I mean, I used to be a flower grower. I used climate screens too. It applies to anything in a greenhouse that is being grown. Now, in the northern regions of North America, there are very specific challenges, and in the southern regions, there are different challenges. Mainly because there are so many different climates spread across North America, you need to have the right products to support the right climate. And in doing so, you are able to maintain the type of climate within the greenhouse that would be suitable for your crop. So in the wintertime, a lot of those challenges are mostly involved with the reduced amount of solar radiation, which causes lower temperatures and requires you to increase the heat load in your greenhouse. So the reduced light and cold weather. In the summertime, it could be high radiation and increased heat because of the greenhouse structure. So you're going to need more shading materials or shading materials that allow airflow to pass through them. So in a greenhouse, when you're growing, you need to think about all those climate challenges together and think of what products would be used or strategically operated to solve those challenges. When it comes to climate screens, our climate screens are designed to be multifunctional or very specified. So the main six factors that we take into consideration in the greenhouse are light diffusion, energy savings, blackout or light deprivation, pest exclusion, thermal control, and dual shading. Now, this doesn't mean that there are specific products for each of these purposes or functions. There could be, for example, blackout screens that also act as energy saving screens. But there are also different situations where a light diffusion screen or a shading screen might not act as an energy saving screen, but it could act as a pest exclusion screen. So there's different combinations of different screens for different purposes. And that is essentially what my job is, where I have to have very detailed conversations with growers and take all these variables into consideration to find the specific climate screen for your greenhouse. We always start in Svensson with focusing on what crop you're growing, and then we expand outwards. What is the crop? Where are you growing? What is the climate of that area that you're growing in? What type of greenhouse structure you have, from the covering to the sidewalls to the equipment installed inside, where your heat inputs are, how you're controlling all those variables. We have to take all of those into consideration, because if we neglect even one of those and we provide a screen recommendation based off of less information than that, then there might be a part of the season or a period of your production where you can't use the screen, or it's going to be counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish. So it's really important from our perspective at Svensson that we are there to support the customer in understanding the entire growing production cycle. And then that way we get you the best option possible. So I'm going to also go through right now a few different a few of those different functions of screens. So the first one is light diffusion. Light diffusion is a property through a material where it takes the incoming direct radiation and then scatters it evenly through the greenhouse. With light diffusion, you're able to get lower crop temperatures, less direct sunlight, and there's also the possibility of installing a screen that has something we call an open structure that allows you to diffuse as much light as possible evenly across a bay and still provide airflow to pass through it. Oftentimes, growers are going for something called a closed structured screen, where on the bottom left of this image, you'll see that there is a line allowing airflow coming through your roofs, but you're only able to pass air through that opening in the screen called a gap. When you gap your screen, that's where you're exchanging your air through your roof vents. If you have a light diffusion screen and you're opening that up to ventilate, you're going to be causing a line going all the way across the greenhouse, which can cause uneven growth or more direct light towards one part of the crop compared to the rest that's being shaded. If you have an open structured screen with diffused strips in it, you can keep that completely closed, ventilate the greenhouse, and still provide enough shade and cooling to the crop that you need with your screen.
So now I'll pipe up a bit. We're seeing this screen being used in a lot of lettuce facilities where we're very, very much so spending a lot of time to mechanically cool or climate control the greenhouses. And we're also seeing in some of the vegetable crops in an uptick where growers are finding that with a certain type of glazing, right? So if we went with a clear glass or a less haze or less hortiscatter glass, you could use this open diffusement screen to bring in a higher level of hortiscatter and really penetrate your crop at all levels because of the spreading of that light. So these new light diffusion open concept screens are really picking up traction, and we're seeing it more and more with customers.
Another thing to add about lettuce too, if you're growing red varieties, you're allowing UV light to come inside the greenhouse, where the closed structured screens are usually filtering out that UV. So if you're trying to get color to your lettuce crop, the open structured screen is the preferred option for that specific instance. Here are some thermal images that compare a shade screen that is closed structured in its open position versus its closed position. So those images on the top show the screen in the open position where direct sunlight is coming inside and it's causing hot spots amongst the lettuce crop. These are really high temperatures for a lettuce crop. So this was also done in China. I did not take these pictures. I was not at that greenhouse. But these are very, very unbalanced sections of the greenhouse because of the direct radiation. On the bottom pictures, they close the screen and you can see the uniform temperature profile going all the way across every bay. And the only hot spots you're noticing are on all the metal parts of the greenhouse. On the crop, it's much cooler and it's much more uniform. So that means you're going to get more uniform crop growth and less differences in watering. Because now all the temperature across the crop is completely the same. Another thing to think about in the materials of your shading screens are whether or not it's a plastic strip or a metal strip. So if you're ordering screens and you need high insulative materials, a lot of growers traditionally have been going for aluminum strip screens, but we have been doing research over the past more than 10 years now of working with growers to determine the internal temperature of greenhouses when comparing aluminum strip screens versus white strip screens. And what we noticed is because aluminum strip screens absorb solar radiation, you're actually increasing the temperature of the greenhouse, where compared to white strip screens, you'd be reflecting or transmitting that light. There's no absorption into those strips. So when the strips absorb radiation, they're also releasing that back into the greenhouse because they're physically hot. But with the white plastic strips, that radiation that would be absorbed is immediately reflected back out. And then you would rely on your ventilation and develop a better ventilation strategy to lower the temperature inside your greenhouse. And this graph here, there's a 5 degree temperature difference between two greenhouses that were comparing those types of shade. Pivoting to a different type of screen entirely, we also offer these screens that we call the maximum light transmission energy screens. In northern climates, this is the go-to for a lot of veggie growers, especially in high wire production, where you can close this screen all day, all night, and it acts as an energy screen for as long as you want to keep it closed. It's only about 11% shade for the highest light transmission that's available. It's designed to let in as much radiation as you can so that you can still get light to the crop and retain heat inside the greenhouse. This screen, because it's dual purpose, it's designed to maximize the energy savings in the greenhouse, where traditionally energy screens were really only deployed at nighttime. And those higher insulative screens can only be used at nighttime, because if they were to be closed during the day, you wouldn't let any sunlight in. So we discovered that this screen, because it maximizes the amount of time the screen is closed, that's where the real energy savings comes in. And later on in this presentation, I have some calculations that will show that exactly.
Yeah, think of this as insulation for your roof. As like primitive as that sounds, or low as that's, as like, entry level as that sounds, it's literally just a way to retain the heat within your structure, still allow the sun and the light to come in so you can take advantage of that. So you reduce your costs from an operating perspective. And in the same token, you make an environment that's easier to maintain and you're still giving plants growth. It's a very popular screen in all of our larger scale vegetable operations. And it's taking more and more of a grip of all the other facilities that we're involved in as well.
Mm-hmm. And to show the temperature profile of just to understand the leaf temperatures and the effect of closing that energy screen. At nighttime, you're going to be losing the most amount of heat. That's when you're usually closing your energy screen. But here's an example on the left side, an open energy screen in a greenhouse. Half of that crop profile is very, very cold, all the way up to the heads, from the middle up to the top. On the right picture, on the picture on the right, with a closed energy screen, you can see that that temperature has gone all the way up higher to the crop, higher towards the head of the crop. So there's much warmer leaf temperature just from closing the energy screen because there is no heat emission from your leaves. There's no radiative heat loss leaving the leaf to the cold glass of your roof that's going up to the open, cold sky. The energy screen is acting as a thermal barrier or like another envelope on the building to prevent that radiative heat loss. Nighttime energy screens are, as I said, probably the most popular still today too. But as people are transitioning to those Luxus high light transmission screens, they're seeing more energy savings benefits. Now, blackout screens are designed for a very specific purpose. They're specifically designed to not let light pass through. And it could be because you have supplemental lighting installed inside the greenhouse and you can't allow light pollution out into your neighborhood, or you have a crop that requires a photo period or a certain day length in order to have flowering or to prevent flowering. So these screens are created with different layers, and they could be single, double, or triple layer. The most common one is a single layered screen that's designed to prevent light from leaving the greenhouse. It's really popular amongst growers, especially up in the Leamington area, that need to keep the light inside and still have an energy screen. When you go to multiple layers, you have the option to switch between different materials. So you can do a black, a white, or an aluminum layer. The most common one we recommend is something called the white, black, black, white. That's the picture, the fourth picture in that row of screens. This allows any light that would be underneath the screen to be reflected back down to the crop, and any radiation that might hit the top of the screen to reflect back into the sky, meaning you're going to get cooler temperatures and a bit more control in the greenhouse, but still create 100% blackout. So light won't be passing through that screen. A big problem that growers often face with closing their screens at nighttime, especially blackout screens, is the humidity buildup in the greenhouse. So all of our screens are knitted in a structure. They're designed to be created with a knitted structure that allows humidity to pass through the knitted yarns that are in the screen. So if you think about that cup experiment when we were kids, where you have a cup full of water, an empty cup, a string that goes across, you can see the moisture transfer across the dry string into the empty cup. That's because the yarns are absorbing moisture in a more humid area and then passing that moisture to a drier area. So below the screen, if the humidity is too high, the yarns are going to absorb that and release that into the drier attic space. And that rate, we have a measured rate. We say that for a single layered screen, the moisture transfer rate is about 47 grams per meter square per hour. And as you stack layers on top of each other, that gets reduced by the number of layers that are installed. So 2 layers drops down to about 23 grams. And then 3 layers would be a third of 47. But it's you can use this strategically in the greenhouse. You might be able to use this with single layered screens more often than double layered screens. and adjusting your ventilation strategy to prevent yourself from gapping as much is more of a possibility with these knitted structured screens. Now, I only talked about so far single screen applications with the shading screen, the diffusion screen, maximum light transmission screen, and blackout screen. Those are theoretically for single screen system applications. If you have two climate screens where you can operate two screens at a time, it gives you so much more flexibility inside the greenhouse that you're able to implement different concepts, accommodate for summer and wintertime production, retain heat and provide cooling, shading, and airflow in the summertime. It just gives you a lot more options based off of having one or comparing one system to two systems. A very common screen system that we're now promoting right now is called Par Perfect. And this is a concept where you have a blackout screen or a high shade screen on top, on the very top wire bed. And then on the bottom wire bed is a low shade, high diffusion screen. And if you adjust the position of those screens, you're able to control the incoming sunlight like a light dimmer. And the level of diffusion on that bottom screen, it needs to be high enough where it can cover the entire bay depending on that position of the top screen. So this picture is an example of what it would look like inside of a greenhouse. On the left, we have the Par Perfect system installed with the high shade and the high diffusion screen deployed most of the way, and the blackout screen deployed about 20 or 30%, it looks like. On the right side, just the blackout screen is deployed about maybe 70%. On the right side, you can see there's obvious strips of light. Where on the left side, there's nearly nothing. You can hardly even make out any strips of light that would be there. If you follow the lines on the right, you can kind of see them. But if you didn't have that reference point, it would look pretty much uniform throughout the entire section on the left. So it's really important that if you are considering this type of concept, the level of Horty scatter and light diffusion of that screen needs to be high enough to accommodate for something like that.
Yes, and I'm not sure if we elaborate more on the Par Perfect concept, but you can see that on the left side, this is a great picture, a great comparison. On that left side, that diffusement screen is doing its job, and that blackout screen is actually reducing the amount of light coming in or maximizing that light. So it's a really cool concept that, again, is picking up a lot of traction now because you can continuously maintain a consistent light level to avoid warm shock, stress, anything to the plant, and make the environment more comfortable at all times. So the Par Perfect, as Paul said, think of the top cord and the bottom cord. We will literally have two separate screening drive systems that would simultaneously move whichever the two screens that you want to activate or open or close more or less to maintain this. And the only additional cost would, or additional input to the facility would be sensors to actually dictate that par level at all times so that we can use the systems to maintain a consistent level. So it's a really good concept that I think you guys started a year ago, 2 years ago, roughly. I think it started really coming out, and I'm hearing it more and more.
Yeah, because I think it's become more popular because originally it was designed for low light crops like lettuce, flowers, propagation. But now veggie growers are looking into this purely for the control of the climate, not necessarily because they're trying to shade more, but because they're thinking about all the other environmental factors and all the other climate factors in the greenhouse and trying to create more stable balances. So this has evolved past what we were expecting. And it's becoming much more popular amongst growers that we're learning more things about. And we're really excited to see it evolve into the vegetable space. I have a couple more slides just to visualize this really quick, if it's hard to understand. The black line on top, I can't use my pointer, but I'll shift back and forth between these two slides. You can see the black line and the blue line changing position based off of the weather that's outside, but theoretically the light level inside the greenhouse is staying the same. So, So what this is designed to do, just to drive it home, it's automated. If you have a climate computer system, there are modules for Priva, Hugendorn, and Hortimax that will automate this for you. If you don't have those computers, you can still create influences in whatever climate computer you have to simulate that automation. So I've worked with growers that have Argus or the Wadsworth system, other growers. If there's a capability of making an influence in it, you can create this automated system for your crops.
And just to like bring that home again, man, the black line above is that blackout screen. Then the blue is the diffusement Hortus scatter screen. So as you can see, right? Cloud, watts from the sun, watts from the exterior. Concept works.
Yep. And we'll coach anybody who's curious about the system and how to operate it and install it correctly, because there are a few little things here and there. We just want to make sure from our end that this is installed and operated correctly, pre and post installation. This slide is just a quick QR code. If you're curious about any specific crops that you might be considering growing, we have screening guides available for them. We're still working on creating a lot more because we're always learning about different ways people screen, like the Par Perfect system. We'll eventually have screening guides specific to Par Perfect for all crops, but we're still working on that because it's kind of new. But if you are interested in that, you could scan that QR code. It'll take you to a link that has all these screening guides available. You just pick the crop that you're curious about. Now, finally, I'm going to talk about the economics of installing climate screens. So that is the biggest hurdle. You have to pay for installing the system that's going to be controlling your climate. A lot of growers are seeing this not as a luxury anymore, but as a necessity to operate in their greenhouse. And to finance this, they have to think about the different improvements or drop in operational costs that can justify these investments. It's already been a proven material in greenhouses. It is a necessary piece of equipment if you want to run any kind of operation and support healthy crop development inside the greenhouse. But when you need to come up with a payback period, it's really the main focus is going to be on the energy savings and the improved crop quality. How much are you going to grow because you've installed this, and how much are you going to save because you've installed this? So because climate screens typically last 7 to 10 years, probably more than 10 years if you take really good care of them and it's installed correctly, you can see the benefits of it only after a few years. So the installation costs, we've run calculations where the payback period is usually between about 2 to 5 years, depending on the greenhouse. And it can depend on that multitude of factors I mentioned before, where we have to take into consideration the greenhouse, the crop, climate, all the different equipment inside. And we can take those variables. We have an internal calculator that can estimate an ROI if we know the price of your gas and the installation costs. So based off of our calculations, I've made an example calculation to show you, actually. So I ran a simulation where there was a greenhouse in Leamington. It grows tomatoes. It's a Venlo glass house that would be 9.3 hectares-ish. The heating system would be natural gas and heat pipes, so rail pipes and grow pipes. And the screen type I ran two different scenarios where I did a single blackout screen scenario, and then I did a double screen scenario, which was a blackout screen plus one of the maximum light transmission energy screens. And these are the results. Basically, all those numbers are calculating the estimated cubic meters of gas required to heat the space that we predetermined, the 9.3 hectares per heat the space per square meter. So it estimates a cubic meter of gas per square meter per period of time. And then it sums that up to come out with a yearly average or a yearly total. And then you can estimate that on the left calculation, it's the single blackout screen, I estimated 29% energy savings throughout the year. And then that ROI, based off of generic gas and installation costs for a single screen system, was 3 years. So after 3 years of installing the screen just off of gas savings, it'll pay itself off. If you were to consider a double screen installation on the right side, that calculator estimated 57% energy savings. And that's because you're adding a second screen and you're also using a screen that can be extended throughout the day, where the energy savings really, really comes from the amount of time that screen is closed. So you're looking at an installation that was probably twice as expensive, but on the top of that calculation, you'll see it says ROI 3.34 years. And that's basically the same thing as installing a single screen system. So if you're going from 0 screens to 2 screens, that pays itself off in a very short amount of time. It's very comparable to what you would get from installing a single screen system. That's why we're always pushing for double screen installations, because the benefits of getting the benefits you're getting from the system isn't just energy savings. It pays itself off so quickly that the operational costs, yes, are going to go down, but now you have so much more flexibility inside the greenhouse to control your climate.
Yeah, less stress.
What was that?
Less stress.
Much less stress.
As a grower, exactly. As a grower operating a facility, like I can speak to that personally. It does provide you a level of less stress because of that consistency, because of that control, because of the ability you gain from having the 2 screens. So there's value to that as well.
Yeah, and we're learning how we can estimate. I can't verify estimating the yield increase of installing our screens because there's so many other variables that would be included in that. But if you take the consideration heat stress, cold stress, fruit setting, fruit weight, and that uniformity you're trying to get inside the greenhouse, if you were to install a screen that can control that with more consistency, you're going to be getting higher yields theoretically because you have you have higher control, and that is another added benefit that is another increase in your profits, which justifies the purchase of a screen. So you're getting more money because you're selling higher quality fruits or more fruits. Now, pulling up on the summary here, I guess I zipped through this pretty quick. But the key takeaways that I want to leave everybody with are that climate screens are going to help the greenhouse entirely. It would be silly to not consider it because they are so beneficial and so necessary for many operations. They're designed to solve many different types of challenges inside the greenhouse. Payback periods are relatively short, especially if you're going from 0 to 2 screens. They just speak for themselves in terms of gas savings if you're operating especially in a super cold climate. The value is going to depend on your greenhouse, so that's going to vary. Like I said, northern climates are going to probably see higher gas savings compared to southern climates, because it's just in southern climates you're not really trying to warm up your greenhouse, trying to make it cooler. So it's always going to vary depending on where you are. And we have, as I've shown you, we have many tools available that can help support the decision of whether or not you want to install a screen or what it's going to do inside the greenhouse for you. We also can help identify some rebates that might be available in your area. So if you're curious about that, you could actually check out our website and see we have a rebates guide. A very good chance that someone near you, like a local utility or your province, is offering rebates for energy screens specifically.
Yeah. We see it on both sides of the border. We work in both Canada and the United States, and in both countries, there are incentives for growers, owner operators from a rebate perspective, because you're taxing less on the utilities made to the public. On top of what Svensson has to offer, what we're going to be doing with Svensson, you'll hear about that soon from our side of the business. We will be offering in-house assessments where we can actually come to your facility, take a look what you have existing, look at your structures as well, make recommendations based on what Paul can offer from a crop perspective, and then we can work with them and work backwards to recommend the right screen system to drive the screens, and however many screens that may be, and then obviously to custom and customize and make sure that it fits your facility perfectly, to obviously seal it as much as possible when we do activate the energy screens or any screen, to really gain the full benefit of the screen material and the systems themselves. So yeah, that'll be coming soon. You'll be hearing about it soon from our side. And that's something that we're both excited about, Paul and I, because we feel that there's a really good need, a really big need for this type of technology, this type of screen material. And with a little bit of effort, you'll see and benefit from some pretty big gains. And that's what we hope to bring.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, all Paul's information here now.
Yeah, no, thanks for mentioning that, Tony. Actually, I thought I had a slide in here about it, but exactly what Tony just mentioned, it's something that I've been working on the past year, where I'm trying to do more light transmission measurements of greenhouse. We call it a screen audit in our company, where I'm basically checking out your greenhouse, seeing what's going on, and seeing, okay, maybe we could come up with a replacement plan, and Prospient and us can work together and figure out, okay, you're going to need this model of screen during this year because this screen has aged so far, and its light transmission is currently this, or it's compromised in certain areas. So I will likely, if you're interested in that, I will likely be coming to your greenhouse to perform that. With someone from the Prospient team.
Great. Well, we'll give everybody a little bit of a chance to get some questions going in the, in the chat, and feel free to make comments. We definitely want interaction. Maybe while we're waiting for that, Paul, can you speak a little bit to, like, are there trade-offs with all, we've got the energy codes in California and other places, becoming more important. So are there trade-offs with the screens between, like, maximizing your energy savings for, to meet codes or incentives, and, like, maintaining, like, optimal DLI or crop steering, things like that?
I think that's a bit of a loaded question, because there's some, like, energy codes are more related to the restrictions of, like, the California situation specifically. I think they're trying to push double glazing on greenhouses, right? So the argument right now in that situation is you don't need to do double glazing because it's going to be so expensive to force growers to do that. A cheaper alternative that provides more flexibility is installing an energy curtain. And with an installed material like a double glazing, you're now fixed to the light transmission of that piece of material that can't move. It's not dynamic, and you're basically stuck with it. So yeah, it's providing a bit more insulation, but it's not providing the flexibility you need in an environment that needs to be flexible. So I guess to answer your question, it's only it's hard to argue with people who are really only focusing on one variable when they don't fully understand the whole scope of the project of, like, a greenhouse, for example. It's like a building inspector's I've been having a lot of conversations recently about this California thing, so it's been on the top of my mind. Yeah, it's the greenhouse needs to be flexible. It needs to breathe. It needs different levels of different things at different times. It's not a box. It can't be treated that way.
Like what you'll see from like a local level, there is a lot more states and cities, towns across North America that are becoming more cognizant or more aware of the LEDs or lighting from a structure and the perceived effect on the environment around. So the Svensson team came up with a screen for something called light abatement, which essentially keeps the lighting within. So we are fielding a lot more phone calls where there's, neighbors are complaining, or the greenhouse owner or grower operator may want to just be their version, be a little bit more cognizant of the people around them and keep the light within the structure. Energy screens are picking up a lot from a popularity perspective, and just requests on what it can do, how it can do, what kind of savings you can get. But the Par Perfect concept, and now the Hortiscatter diffusement screens, that's becoming a bigger topic of discussion now. And we're seeing, like in the industry that we're in, more and more growers are contemplating, kind of, I guess you can say, putting their toe in the water on moving away from what has become kind of a standard in North America when it comes to the glass that we put on a structure. The majority of our larger scale facilities are requesting a 7D haze or Hortiscatter, so it's actually etched into the glass itself. What we're seeing is growers are becoming more cognizant of the fact, or more aware of the fact, that PAR is something they can control. The light levels within a facility is something that they can have more say in. So switching to the concept of being able to dictate how much Hortiscatter they have and when, and then reducing and increasing or creating that consistency, we're seeing more and more confident growers playing with that idea and really seeing the benefits. So yeah, screens are needed. If you have screens in your farm now, great. You should assess them and see when the last time you've had them assessed or when you've had them installed, because they do have a lifespan. If you don't have screens, seriously think about adding screens. Give us a call, give your sales guy a call for your local area, reach out to us through our website, either of our websites. There's big benefits to this, and you see it not just from an energy savings perspective, but also operationally. So, give it a shot. Like, hear us out. Let us come to you, give you some recommendations, and just see some of the potential benefits, and then make a decision. It's worth a call.
Look here. Question in the chat about the installation, and just, it obviously depends on a lot of factors, but generally, how long does installation take? Does that vary, if you have to retrofit?
Yeah, retrofit's more work. Obviously, if you have a structure that's standing and you have crop within there, we need to have access to above. So depending on what type of growing systems you have and the ability to, either empty out the greenhouse or give us access, whether it be carts or whether it be some sort of elevated device that we can get up to do the work. So retrofits usually take longer. From a new install perspective, right, open concept, and we will do the screen installations while we're erecting the structure. So we'll start adding in the cabling and installing the supports and then getting ready as it goes through. So to kind of say it's what it takes for just it by itself is difficult, but in a build, it's you don't really feel it too much. It's another week or so that gets done while we're glazing, while we're installing, while we're doing the work in the structure. From a retrofit perspective, depending on the acreage, speaking from experience, we just did a replacement in a facility that is well over 30 acres, and it took us about 4.5 weeks, 5 weeks to get that done. So we replaced the screens, and in another one we added a system in there, and it took another couple of weeks to add a new system and put screens in that system. So it really depends on the situation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
But the takeaway would be that we're well versed and we have experience doing this in many different variations, from new build to different structures to retrofits. So where there's a will, there's a way.
Okay, I think that's pretty much all the questions so far. If you have questions at a later time, feel free to contact Paul or to contact us here at Prospient. We're always happy happy to answer questions or get you directed in the right to the right place. Thank you everybody for joining us today, and thank you Tony and Paul for a lot of good information, a lot of good things to digest as you're trying to decide whether you want a screen system or not. You can also, any of the webinars in the past, you can find those on our website. You can find them on our YouTube channel. We have a couple, one other on screens. It's a little, some of the basics. This one's got a little more of the payback economic information. So they're good compliments if you want to check that out sometime, and stay tuned because we'll have more webinars coming your way. So thanks everybody, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.